many are still grieving. Some families will be lost to one another forever. To those of you who face the difficulties of reconnecting with family and establishing ongoing relationships, we say sorry. We offer this apology in the hope that it will assist your healing and in order to shine a light on a dark period of our nation's history. To those who have fought for the truth to be heard, we hear you now.
You're listening to Adopt Perspective Podcast, a podcast for anyone affected by adoption. I'm your host and president of Jigsaw Queensland, Jo Sparrow. This podcast is a production of Jigsaw Queensland Post-Adoption Support Service. However, the views expressed are those of the people participating and not necessarily Jigsaw Queensland. The podcast discusses adult themes and listener discretion is advised. Hi, I'm Jo Sparrow, your host and president of Jigsaw Queensland. Today we're joined by someone whose story invites us into the deeply personal and often layered experience of being adopted. Geraldine Hunt was born in Melbourne in 1974 and spent her first weeks in foster care before being adopted at around 8 weeks old. Since then, Geraldine has reconnected with both of her biological parents as well as with siblings. She now lives in Brisbane and describes her story as unique. And having heard some of it already, I can wholeheartedly agree. Geraldine, welcome to Adopt Perspective. We're so grateful to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, Jo. I'm excited to be here.
Geraldine, I'd love to begin by hearing a little more about your early life, what it was like growing up as an adopted person and what moments or memories stand out the most for you.
Yeah, sure. So I always knew that I was adopted. It was never a secret. I had a sister, an older sister. She's 3 years older than me. She was also adopted. And my parents ran with the script of, we came to the baby's home and out of all the babies there, we chose you and we brought you home. And you were the most beautiful baby in the world and we were so grateful to have you. And I remember as a little kid asking my mum, tell me the story again. Tell me how you chose me out of all the babies.
Yeah.
So it was kind of, like this was kind of cool. I've got this really special thing and it's quite unique. And as I grew up, like everybody in our community knew that I was adopted. It was never something to hide behind. A few kids that I went to school with were also adopted. And some kids used to make fun, oh, your parents didn't even want you. They gave you away. And I'm like, actually, that's completely the opposite. My parents chose me out of all the babies in the baby's home. Your parents didn't get a choice. They just got what they got. So, it was kind of cool. I thought it was kind of cool being adopted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did your parents give you any kind of story about your adoption other than, their side from when they picked you up or when they chose you about your adoption and biological family?
Yeah, so just what they knew, which was not a lot of information, that my biological mother's family were Catholic. She was very young. She was only 15 and her parents had sent her away to Melbourne from Hobart to have the baby. And that's pretty much all they knew. There was sort of some little basic details about them, just that they were from Hobart and their religion and some of their interests, but that was really, really it. And that's all I knew for a very long time. Yeah.
Was there always a sense of curiosity about your origins, or did something specific prompt you to begin searching for your biological family?
Yeah, 100%. I was always curious. And I remember even saying to Mum, oh, that lady on the TV, she looks like me. I wonder if she's my mum. And then I remember one day my mum said to me, oh, do you want me to ring up Channel 2 and ask them if that's your mother? Just sort of having a bit of a joke about it. And I was always curious. And then when I was about 12, it must have been around the time that the laws changed, and that if both parties agreed, you could contact through the agency that you were adopted. And it just turned out Wendy, who is my biological mother, contacted the Catholic Family Welfare Bureau at the same time that I did, because I had said to my parents, I'm kind of keen to find out more, and my parents were really supportive. And yeah, so we wrote a letter, and then that sort of started the journey of finding her.
How old were you then?
Yeah, I was only about 12 years old. I was really young, but I was really interested in finding out more about her and her family. I wasn't sort of thinking about a biological father at that time. It was really just about the woman who had given birth to me that I was just really curious about. Yeah.
Seems to be true for most adopted people, that they're usually first very focused on finding their mother, and then later on down the track they start to think about their biological father as well. So
Yeah.
that would be fairly standard, I'd say, for most adopted people. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So she had contacted the agency, as had you, for information. So how did you come to connect with Wendy?
Sure. So we wrote letters through the Catholic Family Welfare Bureau, and I don't remember exactly how it all went down, whether I wrote a letter or whether my mum wrote a letter. And then that letter was forwarded on. So, but a lot of personal information was redacted from that letter. So they had photocopied the letter and literally cut pieces out. Just so we just knew her first name and that she was from Hobart. So we wrote letters, for a couple of years back and forth. And then after a period of time, we were allowed to contact each other directly. So one day I just had a phone call from her. I don't know whether perhaps I'd put my phone number in the letter or whether she then knew my surname. I can't remember all the specifics at the time. Then we started chatting on the phone. Then when I was 16, I actually jumped on a plane from Melbourne and flew down to Hobart, and I met her on my own, just on my own.
And hello, unique parts of your story.
Yeah. So, it was really interesting. And I think what prompted that reunion was she had another baby at the time, my little brother Jackson, half brother Jackson. So he was only 3 or 4 months old at the time. So it was like, well, it's time. So I went down there, and
So now you went down to Hobart on your own. Your adopted parents didn't come down with you?
No, just on my own. Yeah,
so
and
can you tell us about how that meeting went? Where did you stay? What happened?
Yeah, so I stayed at Wendy's place. It was it was a little overwhelming, I suppose. She was in tears, and she said, "Oh, I love you so much," and I couldn't reciprocate that feeling. To me, she wasn't my mother. I had 2 amazing parents who were just absolutely incredible and still are. And so I didn't need parents. It was just a curiosity, I suppose. And these people that are my family, that I just wanted to get to meet. So I met her father. She was living with her dad at the time, and ended up calling him Granddad. And then I met, all of her siblings and her nieces and nephews and lots of her friends. And it was a little overwhelming because people would say, "Oh, your mum," and refer to her as my mum to me. And I was like, "Oh, you mean Wendy?" And I've never actually asked her whether she's really understood that. I understand it from her perspective to a certain extent, but I'm not in her shoes. My experience is completely different to her experience. So it's just, but it's great. We've been in contact. Well, I'm 50 now, so been in contact all these years, and in contact with some of my other relations as well. So it's great. Yeah, it's really, really good. Yeah.
That's good. So what was it like I imagine you had these conversations. What was it like to learn about the circumstances of your conception and the decision that led to your adoption, and how did Wendy share that with you?
Yeah, so I'm assuming that we'd spoken about it on the phone before I met her. I knew that she was only 15. I did know that before we made contact. That information was in the package that the Catholic Family Welfare Bureau provided. And I didn't know much about my biological father at that stage, just that he was of Aboriginal descent, and was a couple of years older than her. I've since found out he's actually probably closer to 4 or 5 years older than her. So that would have made him, around 19 at the time when they started seeing each other. And it was actually the first time Wendy had ever slept with anyone, and I was the result of that.
Mm-hmm.
So they had met on holiday on the east coast of Tasmania, and they'd been sneaking across to see each other. Then on her 15th birthday, along came me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So what were some of the surprises or unexpected emotions that came up as you began uncovering more of that story?
I don't know. I guess probably love. I've probably grown to love my other family, Wendy's family. And I didn't probably really think about that because at the time I was not guarded, but just, she was saying she loves me and I felt really bad. It was kind of awkward for me that I couldn't reciprocate that feeling at that time. And I was only 16, I was so young when all this happened. So it was kind of different. Now I can easily say, yes, I love my extended family, my biological family. It's brilliant. Yeah.
Okay, so I will just apologise in case anyone can hear my crazy dog in the background, who's not very nice to courier drivers. But so Wendy, Geraldine, did you find any similarities between you and Wendy in personality or appearance or interests?
Yeah, so much, so much. It's like I'm just a carbon copy almost. It's quite funny. So even in one of her first letters, when she was talking about her interests of nature and netball and what she liked at school and sports, and I was like, wow, that's me. So that was kind of funny, and we do look quite similar, and we even sound similar. I remember she had been staying with us one time, and my neighbour said to me the next time I saw him, he said, "Did you have a family member staying with you? Because there was someone that really sounded like you, but it wasn't you." I was so confused. And I said, yes, I did. Yeah. So we do have a lot of similarities. And I've noted my son is 17, and I think he looks a lot like my half brother Jackson. They're very similar in appearance as well. Yeah.
What did that mean to you to see someone who looked like you and had some similarities?
Yeah, it was kind of funny. She wasn't what I imagined. That sounds really, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I guess, like I was blonde growing up until I was probably about 18, 19 when it started to go darker. And I expected to just find someone with blonde hair that looked like me. And she didn't have blonde hair. She has dark wavy hair and I have blonde straight hair. So,
yeah.
But apart from the hair color, everything else was just, so similar. So similar. Yeah.
It's funny genetics. I'm interviewing someone later this week who I've already interviewed and know their mother well. And when I heard her voice for the first time, the daughter, I was like, wow, you sound like the same person. It's just incredible sometimes the things.
Yeah.
So did you have any support during this process of reunion? Because I think at any age, reunion is world shaking in a lot of ways. And I think at 12 to 16, when we're in the throes of really building our identity, it's a lot. What kind of support did you have?
Just my parents, to be honest.
Yeah.
They were always there for me, and it was always me wanting it. It was never them pushing it or saying, no, I don't think it's a good idea. It was honestly just my mum mostly. I could tell her anything.
Yeah.
And talk to her about anything. So she was very involved in the whole process.
Yeah.
From the letters, I used to show her all the letters and we would write back together. And actually, one of the first letters I received from Wendy, she had actually addressed it to Rebecca, which was the name she gave me when I was born.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh, so she'd obviously received a letter from us, but they hadn't put my name in it, which has led me to think that maybe it was my mum that wrote the first letter, and not me, perhaps. Maybe I'd asked mum to do it. I'm not sure, but I was definitely 100% into it either way. So, yeah. But my parents were brilliant. I couldn't have asked for a better upbringing. They've been amazing. Yeah, I'm so lucky.
Yeah. And you shared with me before that your adopted mother has a great relationship with Wendy as well.
Yeah, so my mum and Wendy get along fantastic. They have their own phone calls, and Wendy might come up, and if my house is full, she'll stay with mum. The nanas will go out for lunch and I'm sure they talk about me and my kids and, all sorts of things. They have a great relationship. And my mum even says, she's so grateful to Wendy for the gift that she gave her. And she thinks of Wendy like a little sister or another daughter almost. Yeah, more. She said the other day, actually, yeah, it was another. She thinks of Wendy as her daughter. She's so grateful for the gift of me that that Wendy gave them. So, yeah.
And have you been able to form a relationship with your biological father, Patrick? And if so, what has that journey been like?
Yeah, so not really, no. I knew who he was. I had his name just from Wendy. I'd found out a little bit about him from Wendy. And then when I was about 18 or 19, one of my visits to Tassie, we met up with him. He'd actually come to Wendy's house. And it was just kind of, I didn't know what to say to him. He said, "Do you have any questions?" And I said, "How many siblings do I have?" Because I knew I had quite a few. So we talked about that for a little bit, and it turns out since then, I lose track. Sorry, I think I've got about 7 siblings. I believe there's 7 half siblings on his side, and then there's Jackson on Wendy's side. And I met some of his other kids. So they'll be my half siblings. They were all very young at the time. And then we never kept in touch or anything. And it didn't really bother me. For me, it was just like, well, I was the first of many, and he's just gone off and had many children to many women. And I've since learned that his upbringing was not the best, and learned a lot about his childhood, and which sort of would explain his behaviour and the person he's become today. So I've learnt, a lot about him. But a few years ago, I received a message on Facebook from a young lady saying that she was my sister. And I was like, whoa, hang on a second. So that was kind of weird. So she had tracked me down through Wendy. She had asked her dad what Wendy's name was. He couldn't remember what my last name was. And so she looked up Wendy's page and found me under there and had messaged me. And so we sort of messaged back and forth for a little while, and it was just sort of a bit strange. And she didn't remember meeting me. She was one of the ones that I had met when she was very young. She didn't recall that, which was fine. I didn't sort of expect her to, but I had chatted to her sister as well a little bit. And then that sort of went by the wayside. And then just recently, I don't even know what it was. Maybe it was listening to your podcasts that prompted me to contact her again. So we've had a few phone calls since then, and I found out a little bit more about her and a little bit more about Patrick. And I was sort of considering, do I go to see him? Do I not go to see him? He's actually a bit unwell at the moment. And she lives in Melbourne, and she said, well, I'm going down in a few weeks. And I said, probably not the best time for me to come down now. I've got a few things on, but maybe when you're there, just ask your dad how he would feel if I was to come and knock on his door. I don't want to show up if he's not, into that, if he's not going to be open to meeting me, to seeing me again. So she said, okay. And then she sent me a message a little while later and said, I asked Dad. He said he's cool either way. And that was sort of where it was left. And I went, okay, because I was thinking, if I'm going to go, this has to be about me. What am I going to get out of it? What do I want to get out of it? What will I get out of it? And am I prepared for him to not give me what I'm looking for? And so I still was unsure, and I thought, oh, better ask him how he feels about it first. So, yeah, then I got that message and I went, okay, well, it doesn't sound like he's all that interested. He could sort of take it or leave it. But it is just a message that, and so now I'm in my head again saying, well, maybe he is open to it and he's not wanting to put pressure on me, but I don't want to call him because I find that would be awkward. And
Yeah.
so many things running around in my head about what do I do with this information now. But I know that Hannah, so my sister, she is I was going to say she's the eldest, but she's not, apart from me. So I'm the eldest, and then there's a few more. She seems to be the one that's grouped all the family together and done the family tree, and she has spoken to one of her uncles, so one of Patrick's brothers, and he said, he'd be open to talking to me, and sent some family tree information for her to pass on to me. And so he's really keen to sort of get in touch. And I'm like, I don't even know what I'd say to him. I don't know how to, even start. Because I only knew he existed a few weeks ago. So I don't know what I'm going to do with that information either. Yeah, so it's some big decisions to make. But when talking to Hannah, actually, she didn't realise that I was adopted. She didn't know I was adopted. She thought I grew up with Wendy. So that was a shock to her. She said, I had no idea. She said, in your message, you said something about adopted, and I had to go and ask Dad about it. And she said, I had no idea that you were adopted and that you'd only reconnected, later on. And I said, yeah, so there's probably a lot you don't know. And we were just sort of figuring it out. And yeah, so she was the one that sort of brought up his age. And I was thinking, well, that makes him 4 or 5 years older than Wendy. So gosh, that was not only inappropriate, it was highly illegal as well. No wonder her parents weren't happy about the situation. So yeah, so that's just a bit about what I've learnt, in the last couple of months.
Gosh, the complexities around families impacted by adoption, and just hearing that story, it makes me feel really sad, Geraldine, just the factors and trying to put pieces back together with no history. How does it feel for you?
Yeah, I guess, like I said, I'm a bit all over the shop at the moment. I don't know what to make of it and whether I've got the energy. Do you know what I mean? Because it takes a lot of energy. It absolutely does, a lot of mental energy to bring these people into your life as family, because otherwise, why are you going to do it? Do you want to do it just to get information? Are you curious? I am a little bit curious, but at the same time, I don't feel like anything's missing from my life. I never felt like I was odd or that I needed to do this just to find out who I was. It was simply curiosity. I just wanted to know. Just wanted to know. Yeah. So because I had such a great upbringing and my parents were incredible with sharing any information that they could, I never felt like I missed out.
Yeah. You're a mother yourself, Geraldine. If you're comfortable reflecting on this, I'm wondering how your adoption experience has shaped the way that you approached parenting or your closest relationships.
I don't believe it has. I don't think it has. Not consciously, anyway, not that I'm aware of myself. I don't think that's impacted. If anything, it's been good for the kids. They now have an extra nana. And she's come up and looked after the kids while my husband and I went away last year, and so it's been great for them. And they know my story, and I've always been open with them about my story, and they know exactly where I've come from. So they've known everything about me, whereas I didn't know half of what I know now until much later on. So it's been, I suppose, it's been really interesting for them, I guess, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's just normal. It's just their normal. It's just their normal. Yeah.
So I didn't learn till we were just talking now that your father was Aboriginal. I wonder if is that something that you've explored at all, like that side of your culture?
A little bit. I don't know a lot about it. I know that Hannah, my sister, and her uncle have got a lot of information on that if I wanted to explore it further. I know that they're Tasmanian Aboriginals, and I know the tribe, and that's sort of all I know at this stage. Yeah, I don't know a lot more about it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't want to go into details about things that I'm unsure of. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, and there's always plenty of time ahead too, isn't it? And like you said, sometimes it's not the right time for us.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need to wait until we've got that energy in that space, and it certainly ebbs and flows for me how much I'm wanting to get involved and do things, and other times I really need just space.
Yeah. I guess I've never really sort of talked to anybody in depth about adoption, anybody else that's been adopted. I know, and like I said, I went to school with a few kids and we were just like, oh yeah, we're the adopted kids. I know one of the friends, once I'd gotten in touch with Wendy and I had photos and I was talking to her and showing her, and her mum was not keen on her finding out anything about her family, and sort of dissolved that friendship. She didn't want her to be spending time with me because that might make her curious and want to know more. And yeah, I don't know where she is now. That was a long time ago, whether she ever did contact her family or not. But yeah, so I know that everybody's experience is different. Every adoptee's, even if you've, like me, and you've grown up in a great family and you find your family and it's all happy, it's just different. You can never compare. But it's, I would probably find it really interesting to talk to other people, and just find out their story and how it went for them. And that's why I love listening to the podcast, to get that information, and I can nod along and go, yeah, that's totally me. That's exactly what happened with me. Or, wow, I can't believe that happened to you. That's really sad. Or, oh, that's amazing. Or, I'm sorry your parents were not on board. And, everybody's circumstances are different, and every biological parent's circumstances are different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That so we run peer support groups here at Jigsaw Queensland, and we do a Simply Social Jigsaw event this year. We started them as well, just where peers can get together and talk to each other. And it is really an incredible experience the first time you start connecting with people who are impacted. All of the things you don't need to explain, all of the things that other people just get. It can be incredible, and a safe place where you can share and listen, with people who actually get it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So for those who are just beginning their own journey, you've got a lot of years in this now, having started way back when you were like 12 to 16. Wow.
Making me feel old.
Whether it's searching or reconnecting or simply just sitting with, the complexity of what adoption is, what would you want anyone who's just beginning to know?
I guess don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to find out, but be prepared for things to not be happy, or not to go smoothly. Just be prepared for anything, I suppose. There might be some skeletons in closets that you might not want to know about, and that might be a bit unsettling. but it also might be a wonderful, fantastic experience, and you just need to be prepared for anything. And it could be fantastic, and then it could be not fantastic. I've just been really fortunate in my experience that it's been great, and I have nothing to complain about at all. So yeah, that's probably about all I could say. My experience has been wonderful, but not everybody's experience will be that. So be prepared for anything.
And why did you reach out to us to come onto the podcast today?
Yeah, I'd been listening to your podcast for a while now, and I was literally sitting in a doctor's waiting room. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to send an email and tell my story. I've never actually sat down and told my story like that before. So never a start to finish. This is where I began, and this is where I'm at now, and this is what I know about my family now. So all my friends know that I'm adopted. Everybody knows that. It's never been a secret, but it's not something that comes up in conversation. It's not it's just there. Do you know what I mean? I don't know how else to describe it. Sorry.
I'm so glad that you did reach out.
Pardon?
I'm so glad that you did reach out.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad I did too.
And I hope the first time that you've told your story in this way has been a comfortable one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Look, so thank you so much for being with us today, Geraldine. Your story and honesty with which you've shared it will stay with many of us long after this conversation ends, and it's been a true privilege to listen.
Thanks for having me, Jo.
To our listeners, thank you for joining us. And just remember that every adoption experience is different and every story matters. And if you're looking for support, information, or simply a place to be heard, Jigsaw Queensland is here for you. And you can support this podcast by leaving a review, sharing the episodes, or getting in touch. We always love to hear from you and what you think of the podcast. And if you'd like to share your own story on Adopt Perspective, you can fill out a prospective guest form on our website, just like Geraldine did. I'm Jo Sparrow. Take care and bye for now. Thanks for listening to the Adopt Perspective podcast. If you'd like to find out more, go to the podcast page on www.jigsawqueensland.com and you'll find a wealth of information and resources on the website. If you reside in Queensland, you can reach Jigsaw Queensland's Forced Adoption Support Service on toll-free 1800 21 0313, or you can call Jigsaw on 07 33 58 6666. If you live in another state of Australia, you can still call the Forced Adoption Support Service number, and your call will be answered by the Forced Adoption Support Service in the state that you're calling from. In every other state, Relationships Australia operates this service. A big thank you to Matt Sparrow for composing and recording our original theme music. Until next time, I'm Jo Sparrow saying farewell from Adopt Perspective, a podcast for anyone affected by adoption.